we'll go from here. Well, welcome back to week 2 of introduction to 3D modeling. Today, kind of going over more about game prop topology basics. So also kind of like a quick recap of some of the keys we kind of went over last week, and also introduce a few other things. So hopefully it'll help you with the upcoming assignment and possibly the quiz as well, which I'll continue to recap, and as well as a final project, which I'll just kind of introduce and go over that briefly towards the end. Apologies if I sound a bit hoarse. I was out in the woods last Saturday cutting a log up, and I got a lot of wood pollen and kind of wood mold in my lungs, I think. So, but no one else in my family is sick or anything, so I think it's just allergies. So that's just how it is, but doing better. Just I might sound a bit off. Aside from that, yeah, Blender. Let's kind of go back over that again and go over a few recap here. So as we kind of gone before, the middle mouse button, if you click on that and kind of move around, it will rotate around your object that you're selected. And of course, you can left click on items and left click and drag to select different items. Over here is your scene collection and hierarchy. So we'll kind of go over this today a little bit more about trying to keep things organized and neat, especially when using multiple models in a single scene. It's good to keep things organized, especially if other people are going to be looking over your work. Shift and middle mouse button, that also pan the screen around. And for some reason, the mouse is not showing up on screencast keys. Let's see. Might have to click this. Yeah, I don't know why that's not showing, but that's okay. Well, I'll try to explain when I say a mouse is being moved or something like that. But everything else seems like it's showing. Matthew did upgrade the computers with Blender 4.5. So if you are upgrading from a previous version of Blender, this also might be good to know. So let's say at home it's 4.3, but then it updates to 4.5. If you have specific add-ons or preferences you had at the beginning when you first launched the new update, at the top of that launch menu, it'll probably say import previous add-ons or import your previous preferences. And so if you click that, that'll include all your preferences that you had before. So I did not have to re-add screencast keys here. It was already there, so thankfully that's good. Scrolling in, scrolling out, kind of like how you would with any other program with a mouse wheel. That's to zoom in and zoom out. Aside from that, there's another thing I didn't say, but numpad 1, 3, and 7. Whether you need to use that or not, that's up to you. That's essentially just locks your camera to that specific axis. 3 and 7. As you can see up here with the gizmo, it does change. You can, of course, always just click on this up at the top, which is what I would probably do. If I need to get a specific orthographic view, then I would just click on that axis. And of course, if you hover over top of this, you will see a little shortcut, numpad 7, or numpad 3, numpad 7, 1. So it does also show you some of the views. Cool. So aside from that, there's numpad 5, which it switches from perspective to orthographic. So kind of like how you'd see with the isometric view. Think of old style games or like old CRPG games like Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, not 3. That is kind of stuck at that orthographic view, or even like SimCity games. But you can switch that out. Something like that might be good if you're building something, you want a camera like this over to the side and kind of keep that as a reference, and you kind of have another screen over here with the perspective view, and you just kind of model like a diorama or something, something simple like that. Or if you don't need perspective for whatever reason. Numpad 0, important key, will hop over to the camera view, or you can, of course, use this shortcut over here. And if you need to control the camera, you can always press Control and tilde key, which is the one next to your 1 and probably below your escape key. And you should be able to.
Can we use F12?
Pardon?
That,
Oh, to render?
yeah.
Yeah, F12 is to render that scene. And I know that was key. TRL to walk, camera, blender. I know that was a camera. Pretty sure that was a Control W. Yeah, I know there's a key here to be able to walk with that. Shortcut. Oh, that's right. Shift, backtick. Okay. Turn it off in 0, shift. There we go, that's what it was. So it wasn't Control, it was Shift. Shift and the tilde key. That will enable you to be able to move the camera around like a first-person drone footage. And that can help you kind of get the view you might want a little bit easier than just kind of manually moving around. That is using the WASD keys. So if you're more used to that with playing on a PC.
It's exactly the same controls as no clip in most video games.
Yeah, and when we go to Unreal Engine, you'll see that it has the same kind of camera view. Q to go down, E to go up, ascend and descend. So hopefully that will help. You can escape to go out of that and move out of that.
Also, that use shift makes you move faster.
Yeah, and you can use the scroll wheel to go up and down to increase the speed going up or going back. Tab. So this is important. Tab is to be able to, whenever you select out an object, you press Tab and that will give you to edit mode. You'll see up the top left here that this will change. You can of course left click on this and change to object mode or edit mode. And when in edit mode, 1 is for vertex selection, and you can see it selects just the vertices. 2, select edges. So if you had 1 and you had these two selected, these two vertices, and you press 2, it will select the edges that's already combined to it. That might be helpful to some of you. 3 is select faces. This is just selecting the faces. And you can do press A to select all of it if you want to. Alt-A to deselect everything. That might be helpful if you need to move some things around as a whole. Instead of trying to select this way. If you select this way, usually it will not. Okay, it does select that. Sometimes if you did it that way, it would not select the back faces, but apparently it did. Maybe that's just Maya thing. But anyway, G. Now, if you want to actually start moving things around, G to grab, kind of simple to think about. If you need to grab something, just G to grab it. S to scale. That's important. R to rotate. And if you need to lock this to a specific axis, press X to lock it to that axis. So R and then Y. You can also do it for that axis or Z if you need to do it for that axis. If you do something like this, you will start to get really bad topology. And we'll talk a little more about topology and why it's important. And whenever you move things, you can always press and hold Shift. Most of the times, if you press and hold Shift, that allow you to have a little bit more finer control and precision with your movement. It's not as fast as moving like this, but if you hold Shift, it moves slowly. That can be helpful in certain circumstances when you need to make, if something's not snappy correctly to one thing to another, but you need to really finally move it over there in wireframe mode, this is probably a time when using Shift like that would be good. Or scaling. Scaling like this, you might need to scale something really large, but you notice that this is just way too fast on the mouse and you don't want to change the DPI settings, holding down Shift could also help a lot. One thing we didn't really say, but you press S, or any kind of key on a keyboard. Once you press it, then you can press on a number pad or type it out. So let's say 5, you can scale it up to 5. You'll see up here at the top left that it's 5 was entered into it. So even if you wanted to do something like move it 5, it'll move 5, or like move it 2, it'll move it 2. It might be more helpful to lock something to the axes, so X, then you need to move it to 3, and move it to 3 along the X axis. So that might be something if you want to be a little bit more precise with what you're working with. That would be helpful. Oh, and if you say you want to do something like this, and then you say, I don't want that, I want to stop it, instead of left-clicking and pressing Control-Z, usually you can just right-click in Blender, and that'll just cancel your movement or whatever you're doing. So, and that'll just go back to what you had before, just in case. It might save you like 1 to 2 seconds instead of just pressing Control-Z. And sometimes being quick in this, it's good. But also quick can be sloppy, so you could make mistakes. So sometimes it's good to make that mistake and then think, okay, maybe I can work with that. So like Bob Ross says, happy little accidents. So another thing to talk about, Control-R to add loop cuts. We can subdivide multiple ways. You can right-click on it in edit mode and subdivide. That will subdivide all the faces, usually by a certain amount. Before you click on anything, if you go down here, usually you see like a little menu icon that just hovers there. Usually, instead of right-clicking or changing anything before you change, you can left-click on that, and you can see more information about your operation that you're going to work with. So for subdivisions, here it will say number of cuts. You can change it to 1, or you can change it to 2, and you'll see that it'll increase. But the moment that you click off of that, and you decide to do something else like this, that's gone. So you want to kind of make sure that you are aware of that. If you do get off of that and without pressing any other key, you can press F9 on a keyboard if you don't press any other tool, and now bring up the tool menu again, wherever your mouse cursor is. So sometimes that can be kind of helpful if you're working with a specific tool or something like that. So Control-R to add a loop cut here. You can see a loop cut here, but if you want to go off of that and then you decide, you know what, I really want to change that or do something with it, you can press F9 on a key, and if you haven't selected anything else after that, you can change it up. And of course, you can kind of change different settings that you would need to do. You can change the fall off. That's mainly a little bit later on if you're going to be working with or understanding about how this would work. You don't really need to worry about too much about that, but something like even might be good, and the number of cuts. And we briefly covered about extruding. So if I press this, or if I press a single face on the keyboard or on the model here, and I press E, that will extrude that face. And because I have this menu open up before, it's going to open up and show multiple options by default now. Though if I click on this again, or minimize it, and press E, it's going to hide it now. So maybe sometimes you don't need the menu up, but maybe you do. It's really a personal preference or however you need to check that or change it as needed. So extruding, that's an option here that we can do. We can select multiple faces and extrude them at the same time. Now, if you want to select something Alt, you can Alt select something here, and that will select the ring around it. So if there's like a perfectly amount of faces that are equal, so perfect quads, all around a certain ring, that will select all of it. Now to select something like that, the ring around, that will That depends on where you actually select on the face holding the Alt key. So if you select near the top part, that's going to select around the top. Now if you select around the edges here, or the other sides, that will select around the sides. And if you just select in the center, that's not really going to select anything. You need to kind of go into position. So if you're thinking of a single face like X and Y, you have to kind of go towards that direction and it will select it if you hold Alt. This is only if you want to select a certain edge loop or something like that. This doesn't work just with faces. This is really good for working with two or edges. So something like edges, you can select the edges that way. And you can hold down Shift as well, and that will select another one as well. So Alt to left click on that, or Alt and Shift, select another one. And if you just want to select individuals like this, you can do that as well by just holding down Shift, and that'll still keep your selection. So kind of basic computer literacy if you've taken any kind of basic IT courses here about how you select different documents or different things like that. Same thing kind of applies here. It's not Control, it's Shift. So yeah, let's see.
I figured it.
What?
When I work, I figured it that it is shift
Yeah.
when you can add, but in AutoCAD or any Autodesk
Mm-hmm.
program, it is control.
Yeah, that's how it is even in file selections here in Windows, how it handles things like that. Something like documents download, if I click on this, hold down Control, that selects that. If I do Shift, it does this. That's just kind of like how you learn, and Blender is just a little bit different. You can, of course, change the preferences and keys to that, but if you ever decide to look online or other tutorials or other things and people use the Blender shortcut keys, it's good to know the Blender shortcut keys, all that first before you start to change it. If you're more used to Maya or used to Autodesk or something like that, you could always change that up. You just go back to Preferences, find your key mapping, and you can probably just change all that. So Blender to industry compatible, and that would probably have the control. But then again, the shortcut keys are all going to be completely different. But for the time being, just try to learn Blender. That'd be the best. So from that, we did not do bevel, inset, knife, and all that. Okay, we can probably do that. So I'm going to press X to delete this, and delete. So essentially, kind of talking more about edge flows and about topology with game objects and game models. A lot of times now with newer computers and newer processes, it's easier to have higher topology. Whenever you talk about poly count or tries, you're really talking about how many quads are here essentially, and these are all quads because it's four-sided edges that creates a face, and eventually they will all become a triangle. So if you see here, that's statistics. So if you want to look at statistics for your model, this is always good to have so you can kind of see what kind of information you see on your object or you're seeing as a whole. Over here at your viewport overlays gizmos, you can click on this and go down to statistics. And you click on that and I'll show over here all your information. As you can see, let's see, Shift D to duplicate. Well, let's just create a new one. I'm going to click Shift A and create another cube. Let's just scale that up about 2, looks like. And let's just imagine they're the same, or I don't want to do that. Shift D, duplicate that. Let's put that back here. Over here, subdivide. Shift R, that just repeats the action if you want to do that. And if looking at it far from here, they both look the same, but one would obviously be better optimized than the other one. So if you click on this, you only see, okay, this has 6 faces. That's great. But this one has 6,144 faces. If you go on Reddit, you might find a place called Topology Gore, and sometimes people might see horrific topology, and you can let's see, Control J, or is that J? No. Triangle, Control T. Now these are all triangles, but you want to have, at this stage of the game, to try to keep everything all quads if possible. Basically, it's trying to keep the silhouette of the object and try to maintain that. So one thing to kind of look at in the assignments, so assignment 1, I have different options to kind of choose from to try to model. You can use Japanese themes, cyberpunks, fantasy, whichever one you want to try to go with. Essentially, try to really keep in mind of the topology of it. I have here a quick search you can go to and find the models here and different stylized inspirations on ArtStation. Sometimes you see Chinese students doing excellent work here at 3D models, and you think, oh my gosh, this is really complex. How am I ever going to make something like that? And really, it's like with anything. You might see a scene like this and you think about, oh my gosh, how would I ever create something like this? But just try to imagine about breaking a scene like this down. It's really just basic shapes here. You see a thing here. You go down here. It's just a simple cylinder that's kind of just scaled down at the bottom. And see, this is flat faces here. You don't need all those, you don't need 1,000 edge loops cut in here just to be able to create that single face. Now, a lot of times what they would do there is to be able to create they would try to create a nice texture for it, and then kind of create that and apply that for different materials, and that would kind of help sell the feel of this world. And then, of course, you can also see these hard edges here. This might just be something simple as like a single face, and then maybe they have another option here. Say, oh, I see this thing here, and that might be something extra to put on together. When you start to break something down, you look at something or a project overall as a whole, and you think, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to do that? But the main things to think about for any modeling and anything really in life and art is, focus on the primary details first. That's your overall basic shapes and forms. Then think about the secondary forms, and that's like the little details here and there. If you need to have a window here, think about that. And then finally, the tertiary forms. That's like the third thing to think about. That's like all the little small details extra. So once you have like the primary forms done, you have the overall shape, then kind of work on the secondary things and then work on the tertiary. That will kind of help break up this project, and especially the final project, which I'll kind of go over shortly. To say about this, so another kind of cool thing to do and show you here is something that would probably be very useful is the bevel tool. Control B is to bevel. So if you press Control B on either single face or an edge, that will bevel the edge. So as you can see here, this bevels. If you use a mouse wheel, that will add more cuts into it. The thing with the bevel that you have to be careful with is as you work with this and left click to apply it, and you see here it's created a single n-gon face, which is essentially more than, it's 5 points or more of a single face. And so technically that could potentially triangulate inside of a game engine, but if it's single and flat, but it's always good to try to avoid that if possible. And a reason why is, let's say you want to add a loop cut through here, saying, hey, I want to actually work with this. Control R, and now you can't because it doesn't go perfectly across the quads there. So that's something to be aware of. As you can see here, these are all quads on this side, and this goes around that nicely. So you think about, okay, well, let's say I do want to, kind of make a quads here or try to work with this here. What should I do? That would just essentially, this is where trying to work on your topology and just kind of clean up topology will come in hand. And this is also something where, you might want to take a look at this to be able to figure out how to tackle the quiz. So let's say we control R, even though it can't go around perfectly, we do start to see that, okay, we have some edges, we have some vertices here. So what if I control R, where is that? Control R to this one, and press G on the keyboard. Now, if I press G like this, it's just going to move around and it could make it messy. But I want to keep the silhouette. I press G twice, and then I can move it up. This is where also coming in over here to the Y viewport might be good. I can press G over here and kind of see where that would be. And so that kind of lines it up here. I can then press this one and press this vertice and press J to join. And likewise, press these two, J to join. Now, if I want to add other vertices here, I can do so. And then, of course, you have this up here. If you don't need to add any kind of vertices up here, you could potentially triangulate it. Control T. If you press Control T, that's going to try to triangulate the best way the computer can kind of compute with it. Sometimes it won't always be nice and neat where it looks like it's a triangle fan coming out. Sometimes you might get some really interesting things like, let's say, J here, something like this. More often than not, you'll probably get something like this, and this is, yeah, you can kind of work with it, but it's also probably not as optimal as it could be. All I'm saying is if you do use Control T to triangulate something like this, it's good to also just manually do it yourself, and maybe you need to direct the flow of what the topology is going to be like before you, go ahead and Control T it. So that's something worth to note. Now, of course, you won't be able to use the loop cuts through here, but if you don't need to use it, that's quite fine. Another thing to kind of think about, let's go back to object mode, Shift A, and do a cube here. And I'm just going to duplicate that cube here and show something kind of important. So if I press B to bevel, let's say bevel this at 1.5. And now if I go over here and I move this face upward, maybe scale that a little bit, and then I bevel this face about 1.5. Sometimes you might notice that the bevel is slightly different, or there's something slightly different. Sometimes you might notice that the bevel is actually more like this than something that's more even over here. What happens is when you start to edit things and start to change with the scale, you need to make sure you press Control A, and that will bring up a menu to apply. This will apply scale, rotation, and location to the transform's data. And that way, it's essentially resets everything. It just kind of resets the object's informations to, a new default way. So as you can see here, we have a location here. If I press Control A, just apply all transformations. Now it's back to 0. Maya has something like this, which is like freeze transformation and delete its histories, which is good to have, especially if you're going to start to work with exporting this to game engines. You need to know how to do this because sometimes the origin points might be off. And then when you rotate, even like this right here, since I click Control A to apply all, that included the location. Maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe you just want to apply just a scale. If I rotate this now, you see the pivot point is all the way in the middle of the 3D space. That can cause some issues in your when exporting to a game engine, because like if you want to export a door that animates or opens up, you don't want the pivot point to be right there, because then it might cause some weird issues. So that's always something to think about, where to put the pivot point and the origin point. But we'll kind of cover that more later on in the semester. So one thing to also think about for these props, and even though we don't have the animation class right now, it's always good to try to focus on quads, because quads allow for really good, smoother deformations. So if you need to bend something, the quads are going to bend a whole lot better than trying to have, just all triangles here. Let's see about, just doing something like this. If I need a wireframe view, or kind of like a ghost view of something that still shows it, but it's not completely wireframe, Alt-Z is a good thing on a keyboard. You can kind of see through an object. And this allows me to kind of select through it. So if I start to try to rotate something, like this, or rotate, that would be a little bit smoother deformations there. Maybe shade smooth it, or shade flat's fine. That, as opposed to just doing, let's do this over here, scale this up a bit. Let's triangulate these two, and let's try to rotate this. Oh, this is just going to be really bad looking. If this is really good for deforming an object or causing more of organic bends in an object. That's why also having quads is really important to work with, as opposed to just triangles or n-gons. So likewise, if you had just an n-gon here, let's do something like this. Scale it up. So, well, this is already an n-gon anyway, so we can just try to rotate this. It's going to cause a really weird face right here. Even though this is technically a face, it's just going to cause some weird glitches. Now, if you wanted to make some kind of like art with it, that's one thing. So maybe you want to do some more avant-garde type of art where it's just extremely weird topology looking thing. I mean, that's fine. But for games, you might want to consider about deforming that, or trying to make sure it has good topology and good topology flow. So let's see, what else? So I think I've seen or shown this a little bit before. Let's go Shift A, add a cylinder here, 32, let's do 16. Move the cylinder up. Right now we see that this is a flat shade. If I right click on it, I can click Shade Smooth. And this essentially shades or tells the normals to be smooth. So when you export it to a game engine and you put some textures on it, it will have a smoother look. So if I left click on this, it will be smooth. They're both technically the same thing, but one's showing that the normals are smooth as the camera looks at it. Auto flat?
Shade flat?
Oh, shade flat is essentially the one you just see on the right here. So if I click shade flat, that's what you can go back. Now, that's good because sometimes you need to have the shade flat so you can see the way the topology is flowing, as opposed to the shade smooth. Shade smooth is good when you already have like a texture or something to work with, or you're near the end of it that you want to kind of export. You can also change a few settings in your up here in shading tabs. This might help a little bit. This doesn't really affect the way that it's exported, but more for you as a user and to work with. So maybe you want to change the object color to something like random. This way you might it might be easier to see what color is what and that there's actually a difference to an object. So let's say you had something intersecting like this and you just had material. It might be a little bit hard to see for more complicated models what is what. So having something like random might be good. Also, maybe sometimes you want to go down here to a cavity that'll actually show, some of the edges here a little bit, give like a white edge on it. And you can also add depth of field if you want to, or play around with that as needed. You could change the ridges as needed, maybe make it a little bit harsher. So this is really good for if you need a little bit better visibility to be able to see how something could look like, especially if you're working with more hard edges or hard surface modeling. Especially useful for rocks or even like more of a sci-fi models. That's kind of good to have that. And good for visibility, so always good to do that. I do like the random at least, and you can also, of course, change this. If you click on this, studio lighting, you can change that to different colors or different materials as needed. You can change it to matte cap, and this is also another good one to have something like this. This is basically just coloring the normals of the faces to kind of give you something so a bit more punchy, a bit more contrasty that could be easier to see, but also could be kind of more difficult to see. It really depends on the user and how they work with it. So I'd probably recommend just simple matte cap and maybe just go like a random object color and just kind of work with that. So if I do something like Shift D, it will automatically change the color. That is not a material, but that's something that we might go over briefly later on today when we render something. Also, something to also look out for, especially for the quiz, is looking at the scene collection here. As you can see, everything's like cube 0.001, cube 0.002. Let's say we want to try to keep things organized, because let's say someone else is going to work on this model or look at their scene later on, and someone's looking at it saying, I don't know what the heck I'm looking at. So it's good to try to always be organized. You can double click on it, or you can press F2 on a keyboard to select and change it, whatever selected. So let's say for cube 1, this is, chest underscore base, something like that. Or, this might be, sword. And, something like this might be, okay, this is our sushi for the bento box. Now, if you have two sushis, that might be more difficult to see which one is which. Blender will automatically try to, add 0.001 to the end of that. But it's good to try to just redo it yourself and say, okay, it's like sushi 2, and this is underscore sushi underscore 01, something like that. It's always good to try to keep as organized as possible, and you can, of course, rename your collections. So let's say this is my work collection, and if you want to right-click into your outliner, say New Collection, right now added to that, I can left-click and drag that out just in case it is nested inside of work, and I can rename this to like a completed collection or something like that. And maybe you need to click on this, New Collection, there we go, and say needs to be, textured. And so maybe say, okay, I have these. You can left click and shift and hold down to be able to drag and drop into other collections and say, okay, these are completed and these needs to be textured. So you can kind of keep yourself organized that way. Organization is really going to help you in the long run, especially as you get to be involved in more complex and complicated scenes. It's better to force yourself to do it now rather than trying to, do the walk of shame and try to figure out, oh no, I gotta redo all this. So it's always good to do that. Likewise, it's always good to try to be organized when you work in your files. I haven't saved this yet, so it's always good to go up and try to be organized in this as well. So let's just say Blender models, open on this, and let's just say in class examples 01, or let's just say OT for today. And then just save this as underscore example 01 and save the Blender file. So that's always good to do, and try to be organized as much as possible. When you go back to your documents, you can, of course, find your project here, and then maybe you need to make something like new folder, renders, new folder again, like textures, et cetera, and maybe you want to say something like to be worked on, or WIP work in progress type of folder, and put your models or scenes in that. That's just it's just a good way to keep things organized and know where you're at on your project and how to work with things. Another thing to work with, let's select all of these. In object mode, I'm just going to select all of these, press M on a keyboard, and put them into a new collection. This will bring up a new menu. And so I'm just going to say, okay, move all of these to class 01, or example 01. Create. And now they were all moved to my new folder here. If I don't want to see them right now, I can click on this button right here, exclude from view layer, and then they're all gone. And then I can click on my work one over here, Shift A, mesh, and add a cube. And now I have something in my cube. That doesn't mean that everything else from this one has disappeared. It's just not there. I mean, it's hidden away. Now, if I click on, let's do something here. I've noticed some students in the past had this issue before when they render things. Let's say you're working on something and you unchecked something. Where's the camera? Oh, I think I deleted the camera. Okay, let's add a new camera. If you need to add a camera, Shift A. Find a camera here, 0, and Shift tilde. Let's move that out of the way for time being. And let's say this is what we're trying to render. I need to I press the right mouse button. If you press the right mouse button, that's just going to cancel your action. Left mouse button. There we go. And Shift A, add a simple light. Let's just say sunlight for the time being. Let's rotate this a little bit. And if I press F12, I think we still have the Eevee selected, but we'll see. Let's see if I can replicate this issue. The thing I'm trying to show is, even though you don't have all your objects selected, which, okay, that is showing bright. Even though you don't have all your objects selected. Oh, this must be something new with the Blender. Okay, that's good. I think that must be what they put. F12. There we go. Yeah. So sometimes I've noticed students with the issue where they hid everything that they're working on that they don't need to work on, and it's still showing up. Some of the objects from this scene. The thing is, it's you click on this, but you need to also click on the camera icon as well. And the F12, and then it'll just show the scene that you have. If you don't, and render that, let's open this menu again. It will show the other objects even though it's not technically there in viewport. So that's something to kind of watch out for. If you have some issues, I noticed when students were working on some texturing in kind of like a back alley, they had some weird issues that it would still pop up, and we were trying to figure out what was going on. Sometimes when you have problems in Blender, usually it's the simplest things that you have to kind of look at and think about. Oftentimes we try to find the most complicated solutions for it and realize it's you just need to press a button here and to get rid of that. A lot of times that's the same thing in life as well. But sometimes if you notice that when you render something and you're working on another multiple collections, double check to make sure that only the ones you want to render is actually rendering. So that's something to be aware of. It seems like with Blender now that you can just check on this and it will exclude everything. So that should be all you need to do.
The solution is only simple once you know what the problem is.
Yep, and that's pretty much anything. So,
Computer repairs.
yeah.
I get this all the time.
Yep, it might. I shouldn't say that, but it might be like the 1D 10T error.
User error. Please
Yeah.
replace user.
Yeah, so sometimes you have that, but that's good because we're here to learn and we're here to try to figure things out. And this is this is a good environment to. I don't want to encourage you to fail, but to encourage you to, experiment. And if you fall out short or you submit something you really don't like it, don't worry. It's not the end of the world. Essentially just learn from that. Try and figure out. After every assignment, I'm going to have a discussion board online talking about like a post-mortem assignment, saying, okay, this is what happened. I want to do this. I couldn't do that. This applies from all the assignments to even your final project. So let's say you saw the final project and say, man, I really wanted to do this, and I really had high hopes for doing it, and everything failed. Everything failed at the last moment. That's okay. I mean, it's not okay, but it's okay in a way that, are you able to understand what happened? Are you able to write about that? You see a lot of big games, they put a lot of time and effort and money into something and it fails, like Concord, a recent example. And it failed. A lot of people put a lot of hard time and effort into working on that, and it failed. So I think it's a good, failure is not fun to go through, but it's also good to kind of encourage you to think about, okay, what can we do differently next time? And, it's always good to try to reflect on what you could have done better, what's things that you should do. So let's say, hey, I was distracted by playing games, watching movies, things like that. I should have done this, 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 this. And I'm not trying to encourage you all to do that, but if something like that happened, then at least admit it and try to figure out how to what you would do in the future and about how to avoid something like that so you don't have those same problems in the future. College, it's a good location to experiment and to fall short without too much repercussions, except for your final grades. So as long as I can see that you're really trying hard and really, really trying hard to do it and trying to work with it, then you're not going to fail the class. Aside from that, let's see, do we have anything else? Inset faces. So another thing to kind of look at here is inset faces. This is a kind of a good thing to work with. We have these faces here that we can select, and if we press I on the keyboard, inset, and this pushes the faces inward perfectly on the face here. And that will inset the faces. This is good, so if you need to work with that bento box for the Japanese sushi thing, you can kind of work with this. You can do multiple faces here. So let's say we are working with the bento box. I'm pressing Shift S to scale on the X and Y axes. And let's say I want to make that a sushi bento box. Let's just see like a bento box reference. So let's see something like this. I'm looking at, like a reference here. I can also, of course, use a pure ref. But for the time being, let's just see what we can do here. Let's put a Control R, add something there, and Control R. That's roughly about that same. So okay, we can press these two and inset the faces. Now, if you do this way, it's going. You can do this, accomplish it like this, but it's going to be a little bit harder. Since there's two faces here, I want to try to inset. If I press I and press I again, it will inset two faces here. It it'll inset individual faces, and then I can, let go of that, press this, press I, but now because it saved the previous information before by wanting to just make the individual faces to inset, I need to press I again, and this will select here. So now I can just select these faces here and extrude, and thus kind of creating this bento box. And if I want to select everything, Control A to apply the scale. Let's select these edges here. I'll select Control B to give that a little bit more softer edge. You can also shade smooth if you want to. When you see in life that nothing is pretty much perfectly hard edge, that you'll see a lot of things that have a little bit of smooth, smooth edges here and there, because people have touched it. Human oils kind of corrupted things or rubbed it off, or if it is really, sharp edge, it's probably manufactured, just came right out of the factory. So that's something to kind of think about when trying to create objects, that you always want to try to think about, adding, something like the edges here, maybe like a little bit beveled edges. So, something like that. And we still have a clean topology. One thing I like to do to be able to check if I have clean topology, I like to use a tool, select all by trait, faces by sides. So up here at the select, I can select all by trait and faces by sides. If I left click on this, it will show, okay, it gives me a menu here of different options to choose from. Number of vertices, it's 4, but if I can say, okay, less than, okay, nothing there. If I say, greater than, now if it's 5, this is nothing shown. Oh, that's one thing selected. Select sim. Let's do that again. Faces by sides, greater than 5, nothing here. Now, if I do want to try to experiment with that, let's say right-click, subdivide that face. And now, if I go select all, faces by sides, equal to 5. Okay, there's a few of them here that are 5. And we can kind of see that, okay, this one here has 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Likewise, so that one, and likewise here. So that's also a useful tool. One other useful thing that it's going to save you a lot of time when working with Blender, everything here can be added to a quick menu. Let's say I don't want to continue going up here and saying, oh, I need to look at this again, select all, or oops, I went off of that. You can click on this, and let's say this, right-click on it, add to quick favorites. Add that to quick favorites, and if I go to Q on the keyboard, now it's right here. Wherever my mouse is, that's where I can access a menu of quick favorites. As we get on to this and kind of working with unwrapping things and trying to make textures, this will become increasingly useful to be able to just pop that up wherever you want to and select things. So that's something like, okay, let's say I want to select this. Let's fix this up here. Let's fix this right here, J, and do this again here, J. And let's say, okay, I'm done here. I want to just double check in edit mode. Q, faces by sides. Okay, 4, 5. Okay, so there's one here I still need to work on. You can press J. Now, as things get more complicated, this might be something a little more complicated to begin with, but let's say you can't see everything. You have a very dense topology, complicated model, and you can't see this. You don't know where it's at in here. You can press Shift H to hide everything but that when you're in edit mode. So this will be a bit of a useful tool, and you can say, okay, I see, it's this one right here. I need to work on this. And then you can press Alt-H to unhide everything. And you kind of identify, okay, I need to work with this here. Shift H is going to be useful. So anything here you see that you want to add, you can right click on that, add a quick favorite that you need to do. I think you do that here. Pretty much everything, even modifiers. So let's say you want to add the subdivision surface, add a quick favorites. Now it's going to look ugly, but let's just say, okay, I'm in edit mode, Q, subdivide. So pretty much everything you can add to quick favorites. And if you find something that you're using a specific tool multiple times, you might want to consider adding that to quick favorites by right-clicking on it and adding to quick favorites. It is 1:31, so if you want to take a 10-minute break, we can hop back over here at 1:41 and continue on. And we shouldn't be too much longer, and hopefully get about 30 minutes or so of lab break. Cool. Sure. And I will pause this for the time being. And yes, I am recording, thankfully. Well, since everyone's here, I might as well just continue on with it. So essentially, going back with mirroring, it'd be good to know this because this is also part of some of the things on the quiz that you might want to look at. Mirroring is a modifier. So if you go back to edit mode here on your cube, for instance, if you click on, let's just find it, mirror, and left click on this. Right now, it's mirroring the x-axis, but you won't really notice too much with it. But if you start to move this around, you'll see what it is. You'll see that, okay, there is an actual mirror here. So usually what I would probably do is I would put Control R, a loop cut, and then right in the middle, apply that, and then delete one side of it. So I select all of these here, and then select the other side, press X, and delete the faces. And now I can't select this side here, which is good because I don't want to select that side. But now if I go over here and press E, it will extrude on that side. And of course I can do something like this, like that, as needed. Bevel something here, that will bevel over there, and extrude. So, and if you want to apply this, which is important to know, so you can't really just click on this and work with it. You'll have to go and click on this, the menu over here, and to apply it. But you cannot do that in edit mode. You can only do it in object mode. So left click on it in object mode and select apply. And now when you go back to tab to edit mode, you can select those faces and then edit them individually as needed. So something like this, maybe you want to make like an interesting ship this way. I, E, something like that. So that's something that you can do. For the time being, I'll just hide that. So, for instance, again, mirroring, you can kind of do that with specific models here. So, if you want to start with a cylinder, if you start with a cylinder and you want to mirror that, I would suggest by checking on this here and adding a triangle fan, maybe. Right here it says cap fill type. It's going to be n-gon, just going to be like a simple face, or you can make it to nothing, which you'll see. But a triangle fan, now will just be a single vertex in the middle, and all the edges are going into the center. So triangle fan. So let's say that. We have 16 here. And essentially, we would just need to delete these sides here. Sometimes if you need to cut it down in the middle, you can just press Z and delete the faces here. See, that's where I was trying to see if that was selecting the back faces. It is not. So sometimes you might need to do Alt-Z, and that will make things selectable and down below as well. Select faces, and then you can go to object mode and mirror. This is also one of the things you can right-click on it, add to quick favorites. So if you know you're going to be mirroring a lot, this would be good to have. So instead of going over here, trying to find it, Q, mirror. Now, if you caught something here, you may have seen this. if I go to edit mode, press Q, I don't see mirror over here in my quick favorites. So whatever you add to quick favorites in edit mode, it's only in edit mode. That's what your quick favorites are for. If you go back to object mode, you don't have those quick favorites. You have to have specific quick favorites. So I mean, that's kind of makes sense because you wouldn't have specific edge loops in the object mode when you can't click on the edge here. So in edge mode, that's where you would have specific things like faces by sides or things like that. Here it's just more like the parent thing where you select globally or outside of that what you're working on. But the more you kind of play with it, the more you kind of understand that. And here, of course, you can start to extrude Alt-Z to get that back. One kind of cool thing you can do here, let's select all these faces here. Alt-Z, II to inset. You can kind of make something like a propeller if you wanted. Now, if you press E, like it is right now, you're going to have some weird issues here. So what you want to do is to press Alt-E. This will bring up a new menu, and this is where you want to do extrude faces along normals. And now you can kind of spread that out. Every face has a normal. That's essentially what's the direction the face is pointing and how the light will affect it. So if I'll move this over to the side for the time being. If I go over here and do face orientation, everything looks fine. But if I go inside, it'll be red. So sorry for that flash of red, but that will kind of indicate which way the normals are facing. Sometimes you might want red on the outside or specific cases. That's more for advanced type of things to work with, but something to think about. This is more towards modeling and making materials for it. You might have issues with it, is the way the normals are facing. So it's a good idea to try to understand that now. So let's say Alt-E to extrude. Okay, maybe do something like that. Now that's also an issue there where, that's also an issue. We should probably figure that out. So if let's say, you do have something like, I want to extrude this. I want to extrude this I right-click to cancel that, and I don't want to. That's still there. That's still an issue because that's still reading as, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's still reading as 4 faces there. That's collapsed right in here. That's going to be kind of an issue. It might cause some weird artifacts to be aware of. Let's see, Alt. But to showcase what I was trying to show earlier, let's just delete those. Alt-N and flip 1. So if I don't have this selected, everything looks good right now. Everything looks great. Yeah, I like this model. But one thing I don't see here is the potential issue that I don't recognize that, one of these normals is actually not the right way. When you model things and you're going to take them to a game engine or you're going to take it to the material phase, trying to make a kind of cool texture material for it, this, when you export it into that thing like Substance Painter, it might appear weirdly, that this might look like it's open. Maybe it's something like this, and you're wondering, what's going on? Why can't I figure this out? A good chance is, face orientation, this is not right. So, you can select everything, pressing A and Alt-N, and just recalculate outside. Or if you know that there's something very specific, like this one, Alt-N to flip, you can just press Alt-N and flip that one. So that's something good. It's a little more complicated in the future, but this is something good to kind of be aware of now, because sometimes if you want to start from something like a mesh and a plane, and you want to extrude from this is where I find a lot of students have issues here. Because as a single plane, you have one face that's kind of looking good on one end, and on the other, it's not. So, you go and press E to extrude and say, okay, everything looks fine if you don't have this on here. And then you start to work with this here. You start to get really complicated scenes and things like that. B, I have no idea what this is, but I'm just saying that this is something you can kind of do. So let's just say this is your magnum opus, your final project, and you start to go to the material phase, and then you notice that there's weird issues. It doesn't look right. Most of the time, it's probably face orientation. And this is where having that selected, or just kind of keeping that in the back of your mind to just double check every so often, you can just select all of it, Alt-N, and recalculate outside to fix those set issues, especially for the material phase. But it's always good to try to just keep that in the back of your mind if you're having issues. In the meantime, like I was kind of wanting to showcase here is the mirroring. Let's say you do have an actual reference. Again, I'm using Pure Ref, so this is something you can download for free, and you can kind of have this hover over top of your objects if you want to. You can also include reference images inside of Blender if you want to. If you're following like an actual blueprint and you need to be completely accurate with it, you can do Shift-A, image, and add a reference image. And that will open up this menu here, and you'll need to find an image. This one you will actually have to save it on your computer if you want to find that. So sometimes if students want to work with making a car or blueprint like that, you can do that, or with furniture. And then you just find the image that way. So if I can find this up here. Yeah, for instance, let's say you do want to have the reference of the bento box and in the actual Blender file itself. So let's say that image. It's always good to kind of keep and if you're going to use something within your your Blender file, it's always good to try to reference that in like a notepad saying, hey, I got this from this website. So, just to make sure you're not stealing stuff. So let's say that. From here, we will find it on our documents, class 2, and open. The only thing is with this, it will come, if you use the Shift-A and image as a reference, wherever your camera is facing, that's the way it's going to show up. That's where having something like, okay, I know I'm just going to be working on top-down view. And you just need that for a reference. Press Z up here, Shift-A, reference, and then click on this. And then you can scale that up, and you can kind of rename this as reference. And of course, you can always do Shift-A and then make a cube. Do it this way. If you need to work in wireframe mode, you can press on the wireframe here. And it might be a little bit harder to see, but this will also help you to identify what you need to do here. So maybe you can kind of work with that here. And sometimes references can only go so far and help you so much that you eventually just have to kind of get outside of the reference and just kind of use your own imagination about what something would look like realistically. Because maybe the image you find online doesn't have all the different views that you would want. That you just have to kind of understand about how that would potentially work. So even something like this where, okay, I do see we have 2 sections here. If I put in a section here, you can do that here. Yeah, I guess you can work that. So we could probably put in something here, put this here, to inset. If you want to kind of keep things organized about the width of things, you can put in 0.08 and maybe make like a note of that somewhere else and just say, okay, 0.08 here. Maybe like this. It's kind of hard to see this. And I want to take these. To inset 0.08. And likewise, if you're going to try to follow that dimensions. And then here, this is where you can start to work on this. Oh, I see I need to fix this. No, this is a good thing to also see. Let's say let's say you don't like this, but you're already kind of too far gone. You can fix it. X to delete faces. And this is where we're going to fill faces. Turn it off because it might be distracting. Let's go back to this. So here, I select this edge, and I can press F on the keyboard. Now fill a face. And if I select everything around here, F to fill the face. Now I can press these, I, 0.08, and now I have that as I needed. So fill faces is also a good thing to know. So let's say we want it to be about there. And so, yeah, if we also press Control 1 on a keyboard, this will make it so it's softer and subdivide everything. And you can still work with that. It's not entirely optimal for game development until you're kind of near the end or you know how edge flows works. As you can see, everything just kind of collapses here and kind of smooths it, which in some cases you might want that, but you want to understand about how to actually make those edges sharp again or hard. You can use a Control R and press G on the keyboard, and you can move that edge loop up and down, and you can see how that kind of changes that. Control R and move that down a little bit. So you'll see how these edge loops kind of dictate the flow of inside of this. Let's do like down there, maybe Control B or something. Control R. G. You press G twice to be able to constrain it to that edge. And of course you can do this if you need to. You can do that if you need to. Control R. Control R, Control R. And you could just do like shade smooth, make it smooth if you want to. The only thing is, it's not too bad topology-wise, all things considered. Some things might need to be edited here. You might be able to spread that out, but it might be okay. All things considered, you might be able to remove these or dissolve that. But yeah, overall, it's not too horrible. So if you want to go back to object mode, you can go over here and apply that, and then you'll see what the topology kind of truly is and how it kind of made this. If you look over here, you see that there's just way too many polygons here, or too many edges here. It's not needed to keep the silhouette. You can X and press dissolve edges here. X and press dissolve edges. Those are things that you don't need on your model. And you want to try always keep in the back of your mind about how can I make this more efficient? How can I make this even better? Is this something really needed? If you have something like an actual curve or a bend right here or something like that, then maybe you might need to keep one or two edges there. But ultimately, it's always a good idea to try to figure out what can I get rid of and try to make this as optimal as possible. So once you start to, let's say you got rid of this. You broke that down. You kind of collapsed that edge there. Now you don't have that kind of curve there anymore. And maybe you needed that. Maybe you don't need it. It really is, there's no one right way of saying this is the right way or that's the wrong way. It's just always trying to figure out what's the best way to kind of make things as optimal as possible for whatever you're working with. So if you do have, like a million polygons or something, then, explain why you needed that. Now, for something like a static prop mesh, for a lot of game engines, you probably don't need that. It's always good to try to keep optimized. Even something like this, this geometry here, this is pretty poorly done, and you probably could fix that. One thing you can kind of do is click on Auto Merge Vertices here. Click on that, and then you can kind of G twice, and now move it here, and it'll collapse it. There you go. And now kind of fix that edge. So that's the same thing you can kind of do with any of the vertices here. Move it around. And now you just have one here. So that's something it could be good to have as well. Use an auto merge. If you don't want to do that, that's okay. You can always just try to, well, I don't know how else you would try to fix that. You could probably do it this way. Left click on it and shift click on the other one, M, and now bring up the merge menu. And you can say merge at last or merge at center. Merge at last will do the same thing. But merging last and just having this here, that's a whole lot easier. Just to press G twice and absolve it. If you don't have that selected, and maybe you want to merge some of these vertices here, move it like this, move it like this, and you're thinking you're doing a good job here, and you don't realize that, oh, it looks good here, but it's actually really messed up right here. You can click on A for merge, select everything. M, and this is where you merge by distance. And this is where it says removed 6 vertices, so probably around here. You can make it a small number, or you can kind of increase it, and then you kind of collapse all of your geometry here. But the smaller you go, if you know that there's something like overlapping vertices, that's something you kind of want to watch out for. So maybe after you're done with everything, you're saying, okay, my model's done. Before I submit it, select everything and just kind of merge by distance in case there's any potential overlapping geometry. Or especially, well, this is later down the road, but before you make materials for it and you need to cut this up, you want to make sure that all of your geometries, there's no overlapping vertices. So if I select this, yep, single, cool. And of course, if you select multiple of these here, for instance, M, merge a center. And that will just merge at the center there. One thing that you might start to notice it becomes difficult is if you're working with a complex scene like this, and you need to zoom in, and you can't really zoom in anymore. If you press, this only works if you have a numpad, but if you press period on the numpad, it'll bring you to your object or your selection that you're working on and bring that into focus. If you work with Autodesk Maya or 3ds Max, I think that might be like the F key, center scenes. The larger your model gets and the more complex it gets, the more you'll be reaching over to numpad. Though I think you could probably, if you use F, it will try to fill the key, and that's not, you can always change a key to F or another key here, but it might be taking over another shortcut. Unfortunately, it's the numpad for now, but you can always change that later on if you need to do it. So, something like over here, I want to select period, numpad period. Over here, numpad period, and that brings that over there. But the more you start to think about the shortcut keys and you start to understand how it works, the more you will start to realize about, just how quickly you can kind of move things around in here, as opposed to something like Maya. But Maya, it has its benefits to it. There's some good things about it that I like, and there's some things about Blender I like. I like just being able to quickly model something. I know some people say like vibe coding, to be able to just code things in a vibe, but this is, like vibe modeling where you just go in the flow and just kind of enjoy modeling things. It's a really cool experience. So let's see here. I can select all of these if I want to. S0. That's also something to kind of look at and be aware of. Sometimes you notice that something needs to be, perfectly flat. You can do so by, if you need to figure that out, if you select something like I did here, Alt-Z, and kind of go to wireframe mode, make sure it's there, or the X-ray. You can select the top part, the top vertices, and you see some of these things might be a little bit bumpy here. Well, since I know this is a Z direction here, I can press S to scale and press Z to lock it, and then press 0 on a numpad. And I'll flatten that. So that's something that you might need to do if you need to flatten a specific area here. This also might be good for the future, where you need to really think about retopologizing something like this and making this more optimal. Because even looking at this right now, I could see that, okay, since we have this flat now, maybe we don't need that excess wireframe right here, or this edge here. I could probably dissolve that and maybe make this as a single quad right here. And then you have to think about, okay, now I made that, now I have to figure out about this area here, and you start to kind of work around like a puzzle. Retopology is something where it does become a bit more complicated. But if you want to make a game-ready object, that's usually the way that you will have to go. And but it can be fun. You know, if you like solving puzzles, if you like looking at things and trying to see how, you know, even if you can make something a little more optimal by 5%, maybe you probably like the retopology as well. So this is also something to kind of work with. One thing to think about if you're going to be working with that assignment for, you know, making that sushi box, I think, or the bento box, you don't need to model everything from just one single cube. You know, you don't need to say, okay, I made this, now I need to extrude this for, you know, the rice. Maybe this is for the chicken teriyaki or tofu that you're working with. You don't need to do that, because that could be really complicated fast, and it's not necessary. So that's where you would also start to work on other things. So let's move this over to a new collection. Let's say completed 2. And this is our bento box. Control S to save, just in case. And then, of course, you can always go, when you're in object mode, you know, Shift A, add another object. So let's say, okay, we'll add something like the cube here. Yeah, let's, you know, scale this down here. This is where trying to block in your forms is good. So if I go here and I press Shift Z, it locks it to the X and Y axes. And then maybe I want to Shift Z again, move it over here, move something like this, you know, Shift D to duplicate that. This is essentially just blocking your forms and trying to figure out, okay, what do I actually need to start to work on? Scale that down a little bit. Shift D, duplicate that. Yep, there we go. And so this kind of gives you an idea about, okay, I need to work on this, I need to fix that. The only thing is, when you do it like this, you might, if you want to try to mirror something, you'll notice that the mirror is not working right. Let me just give you an instance here. Let's say here, we want to mirror this. So let's delete this. Let's add a mirror here. Let's add a mirror. Add to quick favorites. Sometimes a mirror, it may work, may not work, depending on the coordinates of where you have. Right now, we haven't really been talking about this, but there is a thing down here. It looks like a target. That's the 3D cursor. That essentially shows about where something is going to be created at in Blender. I think this is probably one of the more harder things to kind of understand, but once you understand this, it makes modeling a whole lot easier. You can hold down Shift and right-click and then move things around. If you know the shortcut key, Shift and S, if you hold that down, it'll bring up this pie menu that you will see things like selection to cursor, selection to active, cursor to selected, cursor to world origin, cursor to grid, all these different things. A lot of times if you want to say like, okay, I press Shift and right-click and move things around, and now this is here, but when I click on object mode, Shift A, add a cube, it's over here now. This is actually pretty good because this will actually help you if you want to model things, move things over here. Okay, I want something over here quickly. Instead of, Shift S, cursor world origin, cube, instead of having something right here, you can use Shift right over here, and Shift A, and then make your whatever you want right here. So that could help with specific things. Now let's say you do want to mirror this on this thing. You can still do so. So mirror, where it says mirror right here, if you click on object, you can left click on this, mirror on that other side. And if you want to do multiple axes, you can. Now Z is where it gets a little bit interesting because that's kind of figuring out, okay, this absolute center of this is somewhere around here. So you just need to figure out what works best. And you can, of course, continue to play with this here as needed. And so this also might be helpful for you if you need to work with it. Shift S, cursor to world origin. If you make a mistake and you say shift right click over here and all your models are going over there, but you want it right in the dead center, Shift S, and then you move it over to world origin. I know some students have had issues with that in the past. That should hopefully help clear things up a little bit. I know there's a lot of different shortcut keys here. It's going to take some time to get used to. Maybe in the semester you might not even know it all. That's okay. But some really basic things, try to figure out what that would be. Even if you want to do add things to quick favorites that you might have issues with. So, cursor to world origin, you find that, right click, add to quick favorites. So instead of trying to memorize all of those, which it's good to do that, if you just remember Q, then you can bring that up and saying, uh-oh, I just moved that over here, Q, cursor to world origin, and boom, it's right back there. But using the 3D cursor, it can be kind of, intimidating when you first look at it, but it's pretty good to work with. But yeah, aside from that, there's a few other things here. So yeah, if you do have something like this and you have a mirror error, if it's not working right because it's not directly in this cursor, you might need to change the cursor or try to model or mirror that down here. So let's say you're trying to work on something here, you might have to actually start to move that over to another collection. Let's say sushi work. Maybe you do need just to have these boxes here just as a reference for, okay, I want to put that here. In the game development, it's like blockout or a gray boxing, and you need to have some sort of idea for references, for scales, for height, things like that. And so now that we have this over here, let's see, sushi. We can just hide everything here and just work on this part here, and just really focus on how to model that sushi. So let's say sushi nigiri, images here. Let's increase that. No, I was going to work with furniture, but I can work with the sushi here. So maybe we want to work with something like this here. Scale that down. Scale this here. Maybe you do want to make it softer, so Control 1. Or Control 2 to make it a little bit even softer. And now, if we go to Tab to edit mode, I can press right. I can just right click and make the edge loop right in the center. Then Control B, and I can kind of move that out. So this way it'd be even. So I could do something like that. Control R. So maybe something like this. And Shift A adds something like a plane. This might be easier to model. And let's Control R. extrude these faces here. This is where maybe looking at an orthographic view might be good. And always good to try to do things simple first, a little bit, and kind of work with that. Select everything here, Alt-E. This is where you would extrude along normals. Something like this. And this is where you could potentially go to here. Where's that? Faces. Okay, nothing here. Sometimes if you do this work in planes, that's where you might get the flipped side and everything's all inverted as far as normals goes. And here you can, it's still here. Yep, you can click on these if you want to, and the edges that you want to potentially bevel. Let's get those, just the outside edges here. I'll select that. Control B. Shade smooth that one. Now if I want to do something like Control R, add that in the middle, because I probably want to give this some depth to it. I can click the top part here, holding down Shift and Control. So left click on one, Shift and Control, and it selects up to the location I want, instead of individually selecting each one. And move that up, and maybe select this one here, move that up. And that, maybe I want to make this a bit smoother here. I can Control B and kind of bevel that as well. So it kind of gets that down a bit. Yeah. Might need to adjust this a bit. Depending on how the chef is, if he wants to skimp out on the rice or not. Make it really big, yeah. And so you could do something like this. Let's say we're happy with this, apply that. Some of these are really unnecessary. It doesn't really add anything to the silhouette. We can dissolve edges. Dissolve edges here, and probably dissolve these edges as well. Maybe. We still want to keep a little bit of roundness to it, so we had to be strategic about where we need to dissolve edges and what adds to it and what doesn't add to it. And of course, as whatever kind of target you're working with here, maybe you want to do it for like PlayStation 5 or a computer that can handle something like this, maybe can have a bit more poly counts on it. But it's always good to keep in the back of your mind about where to, make sure to keep this, trying to make sure that you have a good topology always in the back of your mind here. So let's say we do want to say this is it. Let's say this is the salmon. I can spell it. G, move it down here. You rotate that like that. Shift D if you want to duplicate that. Something like that you could do. And of course, you can always start to think about other parts of, if you want to make other sushi, maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe you want to make chicken or rice or something like that. You can always do that. If you do want to work with just basic materials in Blender, you can. I haven't really talked about this yet because materials are more a couple weeks from now. But for just basic materials, if you want to just change the colors to what Blender's default materials, if you go down here to material, you can see information here. You can click on a new material. If it doesn't freeze up and crash, which it might, but that's okay. Well, in the perfect world, when you click material, a new thing will pop up over here, and you'll be able to rename that to something like, there we go. Rename that to material M underscore Sam. So let's say that. And we can change, we have some information here to change the base color. Let's change this to something like a more of orange. Because we have this viewport as random, we won't see it. But if we go back to material and go to texture, material preview, we'll see it here. If you want to apply that, the one we just made, we can go here to the drop-down menu of this sphere and click on M-Sam. And let's make one for a bento box as well. M underscore bento. Maybe make that purple. And so we have that assigned to that. And so also we probably want something for rice. Let's make it, and you can do like M underscore rice or MAT, whichever way you prefer to indicate that something is a material. But it's always good to keep everything organized as such. So like an off yellow, just so we know that's actually that, M rice. And so as you start to have a lot more materials, a lot more things, you'll start to see that this all gets cluttered up, and you'll have a lot to work with. So yeah, another thing we could probably do, something quick, is maybe like this, you know, something like this sushi here. Shift A. Let's do a cylinder. 16 is fine. Maybe move that up a bit. SZ. Scale it down just a smidge. So the face is here. I'll do Shift H to hide everything else except for this. Select these two. Again, because that was this previous thing. Let's do that. Then I down here. And then Alt-E to extrude. And now make sure I still have everything selected here. I'm going to assign M salmon. Add another one rice. Assign, there we go. And then need to select all of these here. And make up a new one here. And let's say M seaweed. Change the base color a little bit. Might need to lower the saturation. Maybe something like that. Shade smooth if you want to. Alt-H. You know, now you can move that around a bit, scale it as needed. Shift D. Shift D. You know, something like that. That's pretty simple to do. If I press 0, move this up a bit right here. Now I will just put this, make another cut up here, make this my 3D viewport, and I will make that a camera. And so I will see where the camera is right now. Yeah, this is where I've got to figure out where the camera's at. Let's just move that out for the time being. Move that up. maybe you want something like that. Sushi work, Shift A, let's add some lights here. Point light. For this one, I'm going to press Z, hold down, and just go over to rendered. And this will kind of show me, it's like clicking up here at the top. These are shortcut keys. You can press Z, hold down to go to solid view, material view, wireframe, or rendered. So for this one, I'll go to rendered over here, so I see that. This will definitely need a lot more power here. 5,000. Shift D, duplicate that. Shift D, move it up a bit. Shift D, move it around a little bit behind here. Maybe make that a little bit cooler. Light. This can be a bit warmer. This can be a bit warmer. This can also be maybe slightly warmer. And press F12 to see what we have. Not the best looking, but it kind of gives you the idea about how to kind of work with all this and how to potentially tackle the assignments here. If I go back to camera, maybe change the millimeters, focal length, something a little bit more like that, 45. F12 again. So captures a little bit better. I can also change the viewport display, camera, where it gets cropped off, also the render. Maybe change this to cycles. This does become a bit difficult when the computer screen is blown up. But let's go to GPU, because if you have a good GPU, then you can render that pretty good. Maybe make this like a 1080 for a square picture. Maybe change the camera a little bit more. And I might doesn't want to rotate that way too much. Something like that. And, sometimes you could also even add a plane here at the bottom, move it up, select these edges here, move it up like this, Control B to bevel that, increase the bevels a lot, apply a shade smooth, and that's like a backdrop. That'll kind of catch the shadows. So then you can press F12, and then you might see a little bit better shadows there. Yeah, and in truth, it's not. I mean, this is with cycles. So let's say image. I wonder if I could just stop it here. It still wants to do that. We could probably change the samples. But yeah, let's just say that we don't really. I mean, it's fine the way this is. Let's go back to Eevee. If you render through Eevee, yeah, it's not as. I mean, it's okay, but this is also something you have to kind of think about when you kind of render an image is, cycles or Eevee. Or if you want to take it to another engine like a Marmoset Toolbag, which is what I use a lot, that just kind of renders out different images in its own real-time kind of ray tracing thing. So essentially, there isn't one right way or wrong way to say, okay, I've spent 1 hour rendering something when it looks just as good using Eevee if you just play with the settings and tweak with it. Might not look as good because of all the light bounces, but it might still be quite fine. Eevee has a lot of different, a lot of different options here. If you go over here to the side to render, You'll see it has different samples. You can do some basic ray tracing here. So even here, you might get a little bit better looking graphics. You can change the volumes, curves, things like that. There's a lot of different options here to be able to make Eevee look, just as, well, maybe not look as good as realistic renders as Cycles would have, but if you're working with something more like stylized or cartoony kind of things, then Eevee's probably good enough for you. And you don't need to spend the extra time trying to hope blenders are going to crash because you spent hours of trying to render something and it just freezes and you lost all your time because it crashed. So it's, there's always something to try to take away, try to think about what's the balance of what you need and what to work with. So essentially, hopefully this kind of helps guide you all to being able to hopefully tackle the assignment a little bit easier, or at least give you ideas about how to potentially tackle it. So if I want to take a quick look at the final project, which I said I'll kind of go over today, this isn't due until the end of this semester, as we've seen in the syllabus. I did add on the syllabus the outline here, so we have an idea. It'll be due in December, so not that long. But essentially, assignment overview. So essentially what I want you to try to do is to be able to follow the production pipeline and adhere to industry standards, and to also document your process professionally. So when you kind of look through these themes to choose from, instead of the assignments are mainly just focused on one thing, usually, like a single prop or single thing to work with. But the assignments, it's going to compile a lot of different props or things to work with and put them all into one single unified diorama. Sometimes when you look up online for 3D diorama, you can kind of go to search and see about different ideas about how to work with that. I figured this might be a good, simple projects to kind of work with, to be able to, kind of work with multiple projects and multiple objects and create one unified scene with it, as if you were kind of designing a level for it. So aside from that, it's okay. We have these different options to choose from. Enchanted Shrines, diorama you could do, a sci-fi workstation, medieval workshop corner, apocalyptic survival setup, mythological museum armor set, cyberpunk vendor booth, a cozy stylized stall or corner. And I thought I just saved this. Let's see if this, yeah, it did. I don't know why this isn't popping up. Yeah, there it is. Other game-inspired diorama, because I was talking to you last week about, potentially, if you want to do something more in line of like an in-game assets or something that you like, if you want to work with Skyrim, but you want to kind of work with modeling for that kind of games, and maybe for your final project, you do show off an actual picture of your models and textured inside that game engine. Or maybe if you want to do something more like Pokemon or something like that, you can kind of do that and just work with that, but maybe work with Unreal Engine or Unity, depending on how you want to go about presenting that. If you want to be more like a realistic version of it, or maybe you still want to go for that stylized kind of look. So there's different kind of options to work with. And I kind of give you a bit of an idea of how to work with this. You do like you block out your gray boxes, your basic ideas about, okay, I have this idea, these are all these little objects I want to put up together, and you kind of have an idea about how to go in that direction. Then you work with your high poly first, and low poly, and then these are where you'll start to, in a few weeks, we'll go over about baking, and not about cooking or cookies or anything like that, but how we bake high poly details onto low poly details using Substance Painter. The baking and texturing, and then finally import it to the Unreal Engine or your game engine that you're working with. So technical specifications, this is something that's just kind of, it varies. The big thing is it just really avoid unnecessary geometry for it. So if you see something, it's a flat surface like this table, but you have 1 million polygons right here, or poly counts, you probably don't need that. Unless you, there are some types you might, or reasons you might need that, but you have to explain why you would actually need it. So maybe something like this table, a single face quad might be good enough. UV mapping, which is something we'll be looking into, texturing, and exporting. So, this is all open and available for you to kind of look at, try to think about what you might want to consider doing. And I'll have something open up probably next week to say, okay, this is what you want to work with, and just kind of submit that and let me know. Of course, we have the discussion board as well to do. So if you want to introduce yourself, that'd be good. Just saying, even if you don't play games for whatever reason, you can just say, what you kind of art styles you like or things like that. I just want to give you a bit of an idea about how to introduce yourself. Also, I still have the course materials and course videos here. That is on the left. Quizzes. So as always, the quiz supplements, you can kind of take a look over here and find your the quiz here. And as we download that, hopefully after completing, while we're looking at the class today, you'll be able to hopefully take a look at this quiz and be able to say, okay, I think I see some things here. So this might be a little bit easier now, and being able to find a few things that you might be able to find, and in your quiz you'll be able to type up, okay, these are some issues here, and now that you've found those issues, this is how I would probably try to fix those issues. So, hopefully you'll be able to figure some of that out when you check it out later, hopefully. So that's for that. Aside from that, trying to think if there's anything else. Next week is kind of more of a lab day, but it's still required to come. But if you have any kind of questions or issues with your assignments, that'd be a good day to kind of look at it. And we can kind of go over that, as well as I will probably be going over a video and just trying to work on an assignment myself, and trying to, just kind of working on one of these chosen starter props. If you want to kind of keep looking at that and trying to look at that for inspiration, how I would probably tackle that and how I would fix it. So that would also be there. And you can also continue to look at this assignment to figure out what's needed or what you want to do. If there's something else besides this you want to kind of work on, you can probably do that, but it's a good idea to try to stick with this and try to, really try to make it a high quality asset. Because sometimes in life you want to do something, but then, the developer or head lead project said, hey, you can't do that. You want to stick to this. So, it's good to have, a specific set of things to kind of keep you confined. Because if I give you too much free will, then sometimes you go crazy with the concept and it never gets done, unfortunately. But, if you want to do that on your personal time, that's good. I do have something here, a Pinterest over here. Should be down there. Yeah, some stylized assets to kind of give you inspiration for about how you could potentially think about designing your project, your assignment for, in that kind of direction. I'm not expecting you to try to create the world's best thing, but this might give you some ideas about, okay, maybe for some topology or for some ideas, something like this. It's now here, there's kind of an n-gon here, but you would probably identify about how to try to fix that. So hopefully this kind of gives you an idea about, what direction to go for and how to work with it, and kind of create a high poly, or not high poly, but just a high quality asset that would be kind of cool to show off. And of course I have the ArtStation thing here that you can kind of look at as well. Seeing the ArtStation thumbnails here, you can kind of get an idea about, okay, this is kind of quality of work that everyone's seen at the, first thing you look at. How can I get my stuff to that kind of quality? So it's always good to kind of keep trying to push yourself towards that direction. And everyone's always trying to improve. I'm trying to improve myself. I'm always trying to think about what I can do better about different projects, different things I'm working on. And so, you never truly get to say, okay, I'm done. I'm finally learned everything. I'm a master. You're always going to continue to learn. Always try to be humble about that. Aside from that, that's pretty much it for today. I will continue to upload this video to YouTube, and I will be sure to have it on the left side over here. So if you need to access this again, just click on that. I will also just upload this that I worked on, so you can also take a look at this as well. And if you need to kind of use this as a reference to see about, okay, he did it this way, maybe I can do it that way. You can also take a look at that and take a look at it. So external data, make sure to pack resources. You can always do like external automatically pack resources. That'd be good. And then of course file, export, or just save. Save as class example 1, sure. And then I'll upload that to the video section here. So there'll probably also be a file down here that you can download as well. Yeah, aside from that, that should be pretty much it for today. So if you want to stay here until 3 o'clock or so, I think there might be a class app that comes in after here. But if not, then you can continue. You can go to the library if you want to, or if there's another place here you want to kind of work on, or just stay in here and maybe I can come around and help you with an answer, or if you have questions or things like that. So yeah, I will stop the video and hope you have a good week.